So we're going to get rolling on our talk today. We're going to talk about key players in succession, who should be involved in this process that we're undertaking. Want to give a little bit of credit because I guess that's just how the world works. I don't know, but you can see all our respective universities up there. I'm Kurt Smith. I'm from NC State University, assistant professor of forestry. I see Becky Smith's logo there for Mississippi State. We're not related. And Purdue University, I see, is Renee. So the other people to acknowledge is North Central Regional Center for Rural Development, Institute for Family Business, and of course, I believe this is your organization, Roseanne, SRDC, the Southern Rural Development Center. So with that, our credits are covered. So what is the purpose of our module today? We're going to get into this succession planning. So just a reminder, what is succession planning? And it is really kind of a relatively new thing. And I say new as in a generation or 20 or 30 years. If you go back 30 or 40 years, people basically just formed estate plans on how to move things when they pass. It's gone beyond that because people retiring when they're 55 and people living longer and wanting to set aside plans to go another 40 years or 50 years. And so this idea of succession planning has sort of developed as, I guess maybe you'd call it a component of estate planning. I don't know how you want to, or maybe like the laces on a baseball, keeping the whole thing together. I don't really know how you pick your metaphor, but succession planning encompasses all those emotional and financial aspects, both for your family as well as your business, which could be, in this case, most of you, I assume, are here, not necessarily or exclusively, but here with farm and forest interests. How to make decisions and move forward can be really difficult. And we talked about a bit of that in the first module, just sort of think there were some examples certainly that kind of related to how to have difficult conversations or ignoring conversations that need to be had. So hopefully this curriculum will give a lot of worksheets, a lot of things to go with. And I believe that really this is kind of a train the trainer thing. So uh, we know that you're not necessarily landholders or participants, but you may be giving similar workshops or information out to people that you serve. So this should give you confidence, learning some strategies to move forward. Both soft and hard skills are covered. I guess I'd probably say our last module maybe was a little more on the soft skill menu. I think Friday maybe is going to be a little more on the hard skill side, perhaps. So that's the purpose. There's the authors. Round of applause, round of applause. Okay. So I guess with that, important notes before we begin. I always say this at every workshop I give because I give a lot of legal type workshops. This is not legal advice, and so you really do, and it's I say it sort of tongue in cheek, to just sort of get me off the hook. This is not legal advice, et cetera, et cetera. But beyond liability, you really do. Everybody's situation is so varied and so different. For sure and for certain, anybody that you advise, I'd refrain from giving specific advice. And the whole push, I think, of this series is to make your clients or to make your citizens interested in going to see an attorney or a CPA, financial planner, or somebody professionally that can add assistance to their succession plan. So this slide is in here not for you guys. I mean, if you really want to tell a personal story, I guess you can, but we don't have that much time. But this is just if you were leading a workshop, I think, full of people. I know I do a lot of work with heirs property in the African American community, and they talk with stories. And so, but they take a lot of time. So generally, this is just something to try to control if you're a facilitator of one of your workshops, is trying not to admit personal stories, questions that are general, not specific, things that you can't really give advice to that are legal or very specific. But do encourage the group to talk about them sort of outside of the session, etc. So a few definitional things, and then I'll be passing it off, I think. What do we talk about? What do we mean? I already sort of talked a bit about this, but what do we mean when we talk about succession planning? Well, that's the plan for transfer of management, decision-making abilities, etc., or ownership of your farm, forest, different assets during the life of the owner. And so you may be a person that's passing the baton that's going to live another 40 years. So this is a way to protect you. It's a way to take your heirs, train them while they're alive, et cetera, et cetera. Have a good financial footing for everybody in the family. Estate planning really is that sort of that maybe a little bit more of a hard edge where we actually plan for the transfer of personal assets and property after we're dead, after we're not breathing anymore. What a terrible thought, but I guess it's going to happen. So yeah, that gets into more of wills and trusts and legal instruments that actually sort of mechanically make those things happen. So a little differentiation there for you. And also, we had to pick some terms to be consistent with throughout the modules. So successor is referring to that junior generation, the ones that are sort of next up at bat, next man up who will manage or own the land or business. The incumbent, which sounds like a political candidate, but what we mean is that senior generation in your land slash business or the current owner or manager of the land business, probably at the controls of who the successor will be. So those are some definitions to work with. A few others. I feel like these are pretty self-evident, so I won't dwell on them, but we're talking about businesses. There's a lot of different clothing, I guess you can, or suits they can wear, and you'll be hearing a lot about those on Friday. So that can be LLCs, that can be a sole proprietorship, corporations, S corps, all that good stuff. When we talk about land, we're not limiting it just to forests. We're talking about bare land, vacant land, pasture, anything, including buildings, barns, et cetera, et cetera. So those are just definitional things, so we don't sort of get lost in the language with each other over the next 5 modules. So I guess topics to explore in this module is, who is involved in your farm, business, or land? Question mark. Who gets a say in how you operate your farm, forest business? Who makes those decisions? What advisors do you need to transfer your business or property? That could be a lot of different things from a forest consulting forester to a CPA to a financial planner to a lawyer. And then a bit about selecting advisors and then the questions you should ask in order to get the best advice for yourself. So essentially understanding who needs to be involved in the process with you and your family in the succession scheme of things. So with that, I think we are ready to pass it off to Renee.
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about who is involved in your farm business or your land. As we start to go through this, we are going to go through some handouts and some different tools you can use either with your own farm or family business or with people that you work for, work with, and serve. So hopefully today's slides, along with the resources, can be really, really helpful for what you are here to learn. So this is the three-circle family business model. I like to use this a lot, whether I'm talking to farm families or family businesses. It really helps us to center and, actually write down who is involved in the business and the family and where they land. So as we see these three circles intersect, there's these areas of overlap. So members of the farm family business or the family or whatever entity we're talking about can be placed in these different areas and intersections. Depending on where these people are placed, they'll have different insights, they'll have different in what happens, they'll have different perspectives on what happens for the farm and the land. So it's really interesting to look at this and map it out and have people map this out and see where people are. And so we do have a handout for you. And what I like to do with people is have them map where people are now. So for example, if there's a father and mother who are farming together, and then they have a son who's farming with them. So the mother and father might be in the intersection of family, business, and ownership, right? But that son, maybe he doesn't own anything yet. He just works for the business, works for the farm. And so he would just be in that family and business intersection. So it's interesting when we really think about who has a stake in this business and what extent of a stake they have. So what I normally do when I hand this out is to give everybody a couple minutes to map where people are now. So that's in the top part of your handout, and then look to the future. Where do you see people changing? What spheres are they going to jump from and jump to? This really helps to think about how people will move, how their perspectives will change, and how you need to start thinking about planning and transitioning things, whatever that timeline looks like. So we leave that blank for you. They can fill this out for 10 years in the future, 15 years in the future, whatever makes sense for their farm. But that's a really good handout. I like to use in a lot of different situations, like I said. We have one more handout for you as well for this portion. And this is just an overview of your management structure. And so it's really great, I think, for you to work with farm businesses, your own farm, your own business, your family, and think about activities that occur, not only when that activity occurs, but also who does it. If somebody, for whatever reasons, becomes incapacitated, it's great to look back on this annual or recurring activities and say, okay, this is what happened at, before harvest or after harvest or in the fall or in the spring or in the winter, whatever that would be. So it has annual or recurring activities, permits, leases, and agreements. This is awesome to have. You might, if you enter into a farm business, you might not know who all the landlords are, right? It's hard to keep track of all that. Now the farmer can probably drive you around and show you all the different fields they rent and what all should be in that field next year and all that stuff. But having it written down is a really good thing to do. And lastly, management of property. So we have the job or service that they do, who does it, who will do it in the future, what skills do they need, are they prepared, all of these things. So this is a really great handout to use too, and to give to people you're serving and working with, to help them take inventory and take stock of where their business is, where their family is, and where things are in the whole process. So the next thing we're going to talk about today is who gets a vote. We're going to talk about involvement in the farm. So this is not necessarily who gets a vote in, a corporation or something like that, but it's really who gets a say in what goes on. As you can imagine, if you've done succession work before, there are a lot of people who think they have a say or try to get their way right and get their point across. We're going to talk about the different levels of involvement, and kind of where people fall. So really one of the hardest questions when we think about succession is, who should be involved in the process? Succession, like we talked about yesterday, there can be a lot of conflict in succession due to legacy and all these feelings and all these different people involved at different levels. So it's really sometimes unclear who should have a say and when their vote should actually count. That's from both sides, right? The incumbent generation doesn't always know when to listen to different people. The successor generation doesn't always know when they do have a say and when they can be heard. So this will at least clear a little bit of that up and gives us a little bit of guidelines. So the five groups that we're really going to talk about today, number one are those owners, or the incumbents. So they're the ones who currently own the asset or the business or the land. Next, we have actively participating heirs or successors. And those are the people, they might not own the business yet, but they might be active in the management and the actual day-to-day activities of that business. So they're really integral into that farm land or the business. We also have these non-active heirs that could be successors. Sometimes we call these off-farm heirs, right? They're the people who will eventually inherit some portion of the business or the land, but they're not really involved in making management type decisions. Next, we have tangentially related family members. So these are people who are family to the owners, but they really won't inherit or manage. You can think about cousins, may have feelings about their aunt and uncle's farm or something like that. And this group can really be different for each family. And it really depends on who you plan to involve in the next generation and what that plan looks like. And lastly, we have unrelated business members. So these are people like employees, tenants, people like that. They sometimes feel like they have a say. You, as the incumbent or the successor, have to really think who needs to chime in and when. So when we think about who has the power to make these decisions, it can get really blurry, right? Um, when it comes down to it, the owner or the owners, the incumbents, they're the ones who almost hold all the financial power. They have the assets, they have the control, so they're typically the ones owning and managing the farm, business, or land. And really, they should be the ones who initiate that succession discussion, realizing that they need new management, they need help. Maybe they want their kids or grandkids to start owning the business with them. And they really want to invite that next generation in. So the owner or the owners, the incumbents that we've talked about, they have the most power in the succession decision making process, I guess. Next, we have successors, both on farm and off farm. Um, what they really hold the power in is continuity, right? They're the ones who are going to take over the next generation. They can decide the future of the farm and also its potential, right? Um, Sometimes the incumbents can put guardrails on what they're able to do with that once they get it, in terms of different easements, different structures of businesses and things like that. Can kind of put guardrails on, but the successors, they really hold that power of continuity. They decide how the farm progresses. And then lastly, we have those farm employees and non-immediate family members. Sometimes they feel as though they're entitled to a say in the process. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. But in the process, they really don't possess any power, right? They're not current owners. They're not future owners. They
Get out
really
of here.
don't have a say. Um, so we have this also in a table form to help you kind of think through it. So first we have relation to the land or farm, we have the level of involvement, and then whether or not they get a vote or a say in the process. So as I said before, the owner or incumbent, they're really in the ideal position to initiate those succession discussions. They hold the assets, they hold the power, they're the ones who should be involved in every aspect of the succession process. They're the ones who should really steer that ship. So of course they do get a vote on everything, right? Now, next is those on-farm heirs. They're involved of most aspects of the process. They're not the ones who can probably initiate it, but ideally, their input would be considered to make sure that we have alignment between goals of both generations, right? We want something that's going to work for the current owners as well as the new owners, and make that process as smooth as we can. So, do they get a say or a vote in this process? Ideally, yes. They should get a vote on most aspects of this, as they're the ones taking over, right? We want to take their consideration into account and make sure that the goals and objectives of both parties are really helped. Now, as you notice, off-farm heirs are on the next page, right? So as we go down, we're getting a little bit farther and farther and farther away from who actually gets a vote in the succession process. So those off-farm heirs, their potential successors, they may or may not inherit some of the land or the business. It really depends on what the family decides to do. So as far as their level of involvement, they might be involved in some ownership related topics if they're going to inherit some assets, whether that's land, shares of a corporation or company, etc. A lot of times when we have on-farm heirs and off-farm heirs, the parents of those siblings will decide to give more of the business shares to the on-farm heirs, which makes sense. And those off-farm heirs get something else, right? They might get some family assets. They may get attractive land, but not have a say in the company. So it really depends. Their level of involvement will really depend on how that's structured and how the family decides to move forward. As far as those off-farm heirs are concerned, though, the fair versus equal discussion really comes up. Sometimes we see those inheritances being asymmetrical. Sometimes that makes more sense. That's where discussions of sweat equity and returns to the land that the on-farm heirs have helped to increase. That's where all of those discussions come in. Those off-farm heirs may feel like they should have more of a vote than is really practical. if we're considering how they get along with the on-farm heirs and how those parties all work together, right? It is family after all, so there's all kinds of little nuances in there that can change things. So when we think about whether or not they get a vote or a say, sometimes, right? It depends on the situation. If the off-farm heirs will eventually be owners, then I think it makes sense that they're brought in and get a say on some of those aspects, especially if it could affect them. Next, we have those tangentially related family members. So they're family, but they won't inherit or manage. So they probably have an interest in seeing the farm succeed, but they probably won't be financially involved in that success. Um, they're interested probably in the family legacy component, right? If it's grandma and grandpa's farm, they remember going there when they were a kid. They would love to keep it in the family. They want to see it succeed. They have that level of involvement. They may feel as though they have a say. They may want to have a say, but at the end of the day, they probably shouldn't really have a vote or get a say. Although they would probably appreciate being informed about what's going on, right? And lastly, we have those unrelated business members. So those are employees, tenants, things like that. They have a financial interest a lot of times in seeing the succession process succeed. You know, a lot of those relationships, if it's with a co-op, if it's with a landlord, if it's with somebody like that, they want to see that farm be successful into the next generation because they were involved in that, right? Their business might be making money off that. If they're an employee, they're getting paid through that farm business. So they really want to make sure that it's successful to the new generation. Although they probably want to be informed on what's going on, and we like to bring in the successors to those discussions and like to meet all those different people, but they probably don't really get a vote or a say in what's going on. So to kind of sum all of this up, we have a nice handout for you that you can use. It has all of the different relations to the land or the farm. So we have those owners, we have on-farm heirs, off-farm heirs, tangentially related family members, and unrelated business members. We ask who exactly is in that category, so you can list out those people's names. Do they currently get a vote or a say in what goes on, right? Do they get to steer that ship? And then should they get a vote or a say? And why or why not? So we give people about 5 minutes when we do this to go through this handout. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Becky.
All right. Thank you, Renee. Good to be with you guys again today. I'm excited to see everybody back. I wanted to, again, I'm Becky Smith, and I'm an economist and financial coach from Mississippi State University Extension. And so on Monday, we were really talking about basically like how to be in the room. Today, we're really focused on who is in the room. And I wanted to just put this, the crucial conversations. I remember at the end, Roma specifically, we were talking about how do we get better at how to be in the room and how to have conversations. And I couldn't remember the resource, but I'm now putting it in, and it fits perfectly right in here as well. So it is just one link to how one extension is doing crucial conversations. It's a resource that lots of extensions are using. Okay, thank you, Roma. I appreciate that. All right, so let's hop into the team of advisors that you will be thinking about. So what advisors could you need for the transfer of your business or your land? So today is really about, again, who is in the room. All right, so why advisors? Issues and processes in a plan are pretty, they're pretty complex and pretty, we've already talked about the complexity being a big stumbling block. So a team approach, right, coordinates advice and discussions. Um, and so there's advantages for that team to get to know each other and address that common problem. Can save the family, the business, significant amount of time and financial resources in the long run. It allows to have coordinated advice, multiple perspectives. Um, and advisors have seen many scenarios that can help to navigate common pitfalls. I run into this a lot with business owners, and they're very entrepreneurial in their mindset. And so they're wanting to tackle all these problems. And a common starting point is, well, why do I need these advisors when I can do this stuff myself? So, which is a good question, but lots of reasons to bring in your team that can support you. Maybe the first one is that you, as the business owner, that's your comparative advantage, and that's what you are good at, is the biz, is that whatever it is you're doing, right? That's your expertise. But allowing this team approach here, these are some examples, is going to it costs money to pay for services up front, but it can also save a lot of time and potentially save a lot of money and also make you a lot of money. So there's a trade-off to that. And again, a lot of times people are, we don't want to part with their hard-earned profits. But there is a really important role for this team of advisors to be able to set your business up to win. So obviously, and the goal of this curriculum really is to help prepare you as much as you can before you go see these professionals, right? So that you can navigate those conversations easier. You can hopefully be more efficient and save time and money in engaging your team. So you're going to need some legal advice. We're going to talk, as Kurt said, on Friday. We're going to get into the nitty gritty on the different types of formations and structures of businesses. So look out for that. But accountants are obviously really important when things get complicated with money. Somebody that understands the law can keep you safe, right? So a financial planner, so a certified financial planner, a CFP, can help give advice on growth of your investments, your assets, so long-term wealth planning. Insurance agents, advice on life and business insurance, risk management. You're going to need a lender. So what is that that very important question, and what is that gonna mean for you? Mediators. So last time we were talking a lot about conflict and communication and how that can be unpleasant. So, but Extension, this is something Extension can help with. And today I see Bob is in the room with us from uh, mediation. So we might want you to, so glad that you're here because that question came up last time, and probably could highlight that a little bit more today. All right. And so personal advisors in this, an executor or personal representative, trustee, guardian, depending upon how everything is set up, um, there will be different roles that are going to be needed to make sure that things are going the way that you intend them to go. Um, uh, Another nifty handout with this curriculum, your team of advisors. So check this out. We want to help you stay organized and keep you moving in the process. So this includes the different information, and to make it easier for everybody to stay on the same page as far as how to find everybody. So. And lastly, today we're just a few questions to think about as you are engaging your support team. So, selecting advisors is an important step in the planning process. So, we can go about it in an organized manner with these tools. You want to think about it like hiring an employee for the business. They're working for you and are in the business's long run best interest. Develop a job description for each member, and that's really helpful because that helps you clarify what you need and that it helps you communicate with that with the advisor, making sure that everybody is on the same page and no surprises down the road. So interviewing potential members, so you want to be thinking about it like is this a good fit, right? So some questions or some ways to find them, just like other ways that we think about going to, buy something. We are asking friends and other colleagues, other people that you know in the industry, other landowners, farmers, who have they used, and look for good recommendations, right? So once you have part of your team might be able to say, oh, this is a really good person to work with over here. Then that's really helpful. They've already established that they can work together. So that's nice, saves some heartache. A referral service is another potential way to find these the people that you need. There's a rule of a three, right? Collect at least three names for each of the advisor team and then begin that selection process. Three seems to be, this is actually researched, and it seems to be the magical number that because there are costs of searching and the time that it takes and the effort and energy, most of the time after three, the marginal benefit of getting another one isn't as big as the marginal benefit. So three seems to be the magic number. But once you get that, there we go. Okay, and then some questions that you can ask, just to be able to go in there and feel a little bit more confident. A lot of people, this is out of our comfort zone, and that can shut us down. So you can go in with some questions, such as what's your experience with similar situations. You're basically vetting them to make sure that they that they're worth your time and that you building trust with them. So references from other farms, other businesses that you've worked with, how long have you been working, professional credentials. Obviously, you want to make sure that you are getting a solid person. So we're going to bring value to your team. And then how long is it going to take, right? For the process, how much is it going to cost? Those kind of things.